7:30. All members are present. Supervisor Schmidt, would you like to be paid for your attendance today? All right. Public comments. Anyone for public comment?
Yeah, this Colvin Place, there's this new paving method that's being proposed. To me, it sounds very interesting, and it's something I would definitely like to learn more about, and I may possibly support this method of paving in the future. However, in the present state of suddenly switching the projects and changing our method of paving, I am very opposed to it. The bids are out, it's too late. We need to maintain a reputation among our contractors to, why is Dodge County a county that reputable paving contractors want to give a bid to? And once we get the bid sheets out and we change the standards and we say, now we're gonna do something different, are these people even gonna bother to give us bids in the future? And we want Dodge County to be a county where people compete to give competitive bids for. Also, with this new method of paving, why is this one getting proposed on County BB? It's a new method for Dodge County way, something experimental for Dodge County. Why don't we do this on a very small road and see how it goes? We did that with double chip and seal. It was first started on small roads and them experiments seem to be working. Now Dodge County is looking towards doing that on larger roads because it's been working on a small scale first. Also, from what I've heard on County BB, I know there's two quarries, one on the southern end of County BB and one on the northern end of County BB. And the rumor, what I heard, is that there's two companies interested in setting up portable asphalt mixing plants on the southern end of County BB and on the northern end of County BB. And to me, it sounds like we are actually, as a taxpayer, in a very wonderful situation, in a situation where it's likely that we're gonna get an extremely competitive bid as of what we got going on right now. And if we're in a really good situation, we're gonna have two companies giving a very competitive bid. Why do we wanna change this and why do we wanna mess this up? So for now, I think we need to keep things exactly where they are, and I think we should further investigate this and consider making a change for next year's paving. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, then for the pleasure of those that have come for special items on the agenda, we will move to item 11, bullet point 1, excess right-of-way on County G at County F. Tommy Scheck is here, and I believe he's interested in that one. Please.
Okay, I'd like to start this. We met with Mark and some of the residents there with interest in a right-of-way transfer at our last meeting on March 4th. Mark presented to us a proposal for some potential transfer of excess right-of-way on G and on S actually to the adjoining property owners, and we would then consider some kind of a transition of existing right-of-way on G back to the county. That the property is deeded out actually to the far side of the road there for a portion of that parcel. We said we'd take a look at the details of it and report back. So we did that. I've talked to Mark about it. We did find that basically, at face value, what Mark is proposing is fine, and I think our staff would be ready to make a positive recommendation to the committee. However, in our research, we did determine that there is some obscurity and some vagueness on the west side of that private property involving what was Old Highway J. And if you look at the GIS maps, it doesn't show up, but it shows up on the gas tax map as being credited to the town of Beaver Dam as their right-of-way. So I think we're recognizing the fact that that should probably be addressed and reverted back to the adjoining property owners, abandoned, whatever the appropriate legal means is to clean that up before we go any further with a transfer. There's also a private property next door that accesses our Highway S on that county/town right-of-way. They would need an easement of some sort granted into this whole process as well. So I talked to Mark about that yesterday, and he joined us today, so maybe you've got some news to share.
Yeah, have a second. I actually, I talked to the owners, when we originally talked about this about a year and a half ago, we were planning on doing an easement to that Turk property. The Turks also do have an access down closer to the bridge, but when you guys reconstruct the bridge, I'm not sure what's gonna happen with that access point there, so we were planning on doing an easement of some type between future owners and the neighboring property, because they knew they had to access that barn, so that issue, that would be taken care of once the transfer is done, we would do another easement deed. I did leave a message with Dave Addison. Dave is very thorough in the tax listing department over in Dodge County here. And he doesn't show that old road, but he was gonna, I left him a message just to investigate it and see what he found. I think he's probably our most knowledgeable person on finding out if that still exists.
Okay.
The tax map, I think that's just, I don't think, it was hard to read those numbers because it was so small, but I think that's only that first, like 250 or 275 feet. I don't think it goes all the way through down to New J. But if I'm wrong, we'll have to.
Yeah, we'll work with Dave, as you said, but it
I'm
needs
wrong
to
with
be
that straight.
0.4 miles, which be the whole thing, in my opinion.
Well, I'll get that straightened out, and then I also left a message with Dan Brunski at Town of
Okay.
Beaver Dam. I didn't get hold of Jeff, I figured he'd be here today, but, and Dan, his comment was that, same thing I thought, Dave asked would probably be the authority to review this and check into it.
And then some input from DOT, because it's on their gas tax map.
So it's-
I think it's
Yeah,
good,
well,
so
I
I
guess
just cleaned it up.
we knew there was gonna be some hurdles, we just wanted to get it going and see what the actual odds are, if it would even be possible to do, so. We'll do some more investigation and get a new map submitted with an easement,
Okay.
and, we'll investigate that gas tax thing. I'm not sure, does the town of Beaver Dam receive that, or does the Dodge County receive it?
It's on Beaver Dam.
Town of Beaver Dam.
I don't have those records, our chairman takes care of that, and I'm not sworn in as the chairman, but I'm not sworn out as a supervisor, so I'll check into it.
I think this is very doable, but we should just do the rest of our housekeeping before we bring it back to this committee, I think, with a recommendation.
Get everything in order, and then we'll take it up at another meeting. Alrighty,
Thank you, Mark.
thank you.
My only other question with that is, does that, refresh my memory, does that say that the town of Beaver Dam owns the right of way? Or that it was dedicated, you follow what I'm saying, or is
Yeah.
it still across the county parcel?
My guess, and this is where we can get Dave involved, my guess is the town doesn't own it. The right of, the easement is in the Beaver Dam, town of Beaver Dam's name is my best guess today.
Right.
The county owns the one parcel, I'm reasonably sure the parcel in question, but it's right of way. But I don't think the town owns anything, I think they just have easement rights and collect gas tax on it. That's the way I read it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this one then? Then I will move on to what I believe many other guests are interested in, and that would be hold-in-place recycling, other rehab, repaving alternatives. Nathan has good information for us regarding this.
Yeah, I guess I'll make a couple comments if you should, I haven't started. Yeah, the original bid that came out was included the hold-in-place recycling treatment for the subgrade of PV. We've all had some discussion on this in the past based on a recommendation from our hired engineering firm. Hold-in-place recycling is not new, it's new to us. We took a look at it, we thought it was a great opportunity for that road. Had very good recommendations on it from many sources. Still think it's the best approach for that road. And so, in an effort to bring everybody up to speed on how and why we got where we are, Nathan's prepared some information.
Alright, so we got a couple of things for you guys to look at. We got this video, it's like 2 minutes long, it's a DOT video. Basically talks about hold-in-place recycling and then some of the benefits that they found using it. But you'll see what the process is. And then I put together a PowerPoint presentation, a few slides, talks a little bit more about it, and then talks about why we do it and how we can do it. So, first thing I'll do, we'll play the video, you guys can watch it, and then we'll get into the slides after that.
Hold-in-place Place recycling is a roadway construction method that efficiently recycles the existing asphalt pavement. This is an example of how the Wisconsin Department of Transportation preserves resources and creates project efficiency. Workers mill existing asphalt road surface and process the material on site into a new base layer. This is done using a convoy of equipment that crushes, adds new liquid asphalt, and paves simultaneously. A top layer of fresh asphalt is paved after the cold-in-place process cures. One of the most noticeable short-term benefits, cold-in-place projects require fewer new materials. That means fewer trucks are needed to bring in materials and haul old materials away. Additionally, having fewer trucks reduces inconvenience to the traveling public by reducing the amount of heavy, slow traffic on the road. WISDOT estimates on-site reuse of materials on just 4 projects done in 2016 saved 93,450 tons of material. That's enough to fill more than 4,600 large dump trucks. To put it further into perspective, that many dump trucks lined end to end would span 22 miles. While not a solution for every project, studies have shown positive results so far for WISDOT's cold-in-place work. And the method provides another option, maintaining roads and preserving critical resources.
It's less impacts to the people that live along the roadway, less impacts to the businesses in the area that are traveling the roadway every day. And versus a typical mill and overlay project, we're hoping we can get 5-10 more years out of this than we normally would, and that allows us to spend that money that we'd be coming back and spending here, we'll be able to spend that elsewhere.
Cold-in-place recycling is among the innovative methods WISDOT uses to better preserve and protect Wisconsin's roadways. Thank you, and please always remember to drive safely.
So, there are the slides you put together, cold-in-place recycling, there's a picture of that train that you guys saw, where all the vehicles lined up going through the process. This is just a quick summary. Basically what you saw was that cold-in-place process, those vehicles all line up on the road, basically mill off the existing asphalt, crush it, inject liquid asphalt into that mix, put it into the paver, lay down your first layer of asphalt. It's all done in the same process. After that's done, then you come back, you put a leveling layer, thin leveling layer of asphalt on top of that, and then on top of that would be your final hot mix asphalt layer. That would be done using the pavement echelon. We do that with our usual process. We use that PG 5834 oil, lay down that upper layer. This little graphic that I found to kind of walk you through the process again one more time. You can see in step 1, you set up that train of vehicles that you saw in the video there. Step 2 is with the milling, scrape off the existing asphalt. Step 3 is when everything is crushed, stabilized, you add in that liquid asphalt. Feed it into the paver in step 4, it's laid down. Step 5 is compacted. In step 6, there is a curing process where that first layer goes down. You're looking at maybe a week or so. Traffic can drive on it during that week, so the road will still be open. After you let it cure, then that's when you come back and put the top layers on. Again, that'll be that leveling layer, smooth it out, get it ready for the final layer, which would be the hot mix asphalt process that we do on our other roads. I touched on this in the video a little bit, but here are some potential benefits of using this process. Number 1 is the reduction of project time. Basically milling off the road and putting down that first layer of asphalt. Same process right there. You're not milling it one day, coming back and paving a different day later on. So there's a little bit of time saving there. Hauling, you're not hauling off old material and then hauling back in new material. You're reusing what's out there already. Again, less new material is needed. There's some potential cost savings there because you're able to reuse what's already out there. And the last bullet point there, reflective crack, basically, and you'll see this in the later slides. You have cracking on the surface of pavement. You have a deep asphalt layer, you have to get in there and remove all that crack. Period. You just put an overlay over it, those cracks are going to reflect right up to the surface. So you want to go deep, you want to get rid of that cracked material, and this process accomplishes that, and leaves back that layer of recycled material that helps prevent further cracks coming on the layers under. So, why is BB a good fit for this? American Engineering Testing, that's the company that we hired to study the road and make recommendations for us for our projects for the service. The tests that they run, I list them over on the side over there, they look at the traffic, how much traffic is out there. This takes into account trucks, heavy vehicles, when they look at what kind of strength you need for the road. They also do soil borings and collect those borers to look at what the road's made out of, to look underneath the surface. They also use ground penetrating radar, further examine what's underneath the surface of the road. They use the falling weight to collect common basically drop the weight on the road, study the vibrations underneath to get a good idea of understanding how strong the road is, what kind of material is out there. What they find, Highway BB, based on all these studies, they found that there's a lot of asphalt out there. And this was confirmed, our guys, Dodge County Highway, did a bunch of pouring out there as well. And you can see that their numbers match what AEP had, that there's 7, 8, 9, 10 inches of asphalt on certain sections of Highway BB. There's plenty of material out there to do it. Based on that, here's AEP's recommendation. Likely what was going on BB is the road kept getting an overlay on it. Road cracks, put more asphalt on top, road cracks, put more asphalt on top. Problem is eventually that surface keeps coming up higher and higher and higher, and you start causing other issues. The road gets higher, but the ditch is in the same spot, your side slopes are getting steeper. So now you're gonna have to go back and do some grading work, try and level those out, get those back down to standard, do some ditching, maybe some guardrail you have to put in if it gets too steep. Maybe you have to acquire some right of way, to do the grading work, fit it within the road right of way. So our challenge here on Highway BB, we don't wanna come up any higher. We want to put back a road that's strong, it's gonna last as long as we expect it to. If we want to come up with a method that's gonna do all that and yet not raise the road. So here's the recommendation, this is the engineer we worked with on AEP. He recommended with the thicker pavement that we have on Highway BB, there's a couple options. It mentions this hold in place recycling or a deep fill and overlay, but his quote that we paraphrase is that the mill and overlay likely to be expensive because you're hauling off all those millings, bringing in all that new material, whereas the recycled process might save you some money. So now we look at, okay, what are the strengths? So here's the calculations. These numbers here are based on Wisconsin DOT standards. These are the two options. The recycling option is the first box, mill and overlay is the second box. What we're looking at, and how our bid documents show currently, is we would mill off 2 inches of asphalt, recycle the next 4 inches, and then you overlay the 2.5 inches. The reason it's 2.5 instead of 2 is because you have that leveling layer in there. So some spots will be 2, some spots will be 2.5, some spots will be somewhere in between. Then the mill and overlay is just gonna be mill out 5.5 inches, put back 5.5. The third column was coefficients. Those are numbers assigned by the DOT. This is actually from DOT design manual for paving. Coefficients are assigned to the different materials that make up the road. There's a number for hot mix asphalt, there's a number for aggregate, there's a number for pulverized material, there's a number for the recycled material. Hot mix asphalt, you take 0.44 times the 2.5 inches, and that gives you the 1.10 over there on the right. You add it up and you can do comparative strengths. So, strength-wise, these two options are basically equivalent to one another. You can see a mill and overlay, even if you went down to 5 1/4, the math, you drop that down, 0.44 times a quarter inch will give you 0.11, so that 2.42 becomes 2.31, so that's further away than 2.3. So essentially, these are equivalent to one another. This is what AEP had proposed for us for Highway BB. These are two solutions that'll get us what we want, strong road that'll last 20+ years without raising the surface of the road. This is a list of projects where this has been done in the state. There's some research I did. These are the roads that have been used, holding place recycling around Wisconsin. You can see all the different counties listed on there. That article on the left, that's the same information you guys saw in the videos, we go hand in hand, it was from that 2016 work they did. But it's been done, those projects that I came up with go back to 2014, I think there's projects they've been done, even earlier than that. So, the DOT's been using it, in fact, they have produced specifications. As you guys know, all of our items that we have in our bids, our bid package, uses DOT specifications. Holding place recycling, no different, we'd be using DOT specifications for the project as well, so, this is what's currently in our bid package, and this is what the contractors are bidding on, as it stands right now. And then my last slide is the list Brian and I put together, basically showing that in Dodge County, we've tried different things before. Sometimes roads give us a little bit of a unique problem that we want to solve. Sometimes you gotta get a little creative, try something a little different. Maybe it's something you really like and you keep doing it, maybe not. But the thought here was that Golden Place Recycling could be something else that we could try. It's been done other places, maybe it's something we can start doing here. See if we like it, see if it solves our problem. Anything else to add on our list here, Ryan?
I would just thank you, very well done. I would just add that the projects listed here were done for reasons, as Nathan said, we had unique issues we wanted to try to resolve. We need more tools in our box. We know there are many, many, many miles of county highway that have this history of overlays, and they're as high as they can go safely without beam guard or additional right-of-way and a bunch of grading. We need to have tools to work with what we're presented with. In a perfect world, you can do mill and overlays. We have terrible soils in Dodge County, they give us a challenge at every turn. And then we've got this 40, 50, 60-year history of overlays. That's what has always been done here. Consequently, they're as high as they should be and meet the standard. Now, I've been to other counties that have similar conditions. What they've done is they continue to come out, they make their slopes steeper, and then they lower the speed limit to 45 to meet the standards. I'm not sure that's in our best interest. The other problem with that steep slope, obviously, is if you've got big equipment and you've got narrow roadway and a steep slope, that's just a recipe for disaster at any speed. So we don't want to come up. We want to find options that serve our needs, and I think this is a very good one. It's not new, it's new to us. Talked to a contractor in northern Wisconsin, 2 days ago, that does over 100 miles a year for the state and twice that much in Iowa. They've been doing it out in Iowa, this company or this fella, for over 20 years. He was very safe with it. He said they prefer to use it in areas of dense, heavy soils. He said that's a very good solution to those situations. So I'm a firm believer in this. I think it's the right application for BB, and I appreciate Nathan's time putting this all together.
You guys have any questions?
Yes, first of all, I have a real hard time believing that you're gonna raise the road with a normal mill and a 4-inch mill like a proposed road. I don't believe we're gonna raise the level of the road. I think that's all a bunch of sales talk. And second of all, this engineer, whoever he is, I'd like to know who he's affiliated with. Because that road, his analysis on traffic, that road, and I got it from people on that road, that traffic is gonna increase when that road's done. It might not show a lot of road wear now, but we got John Morris, falls all the way from the other side of Jefferson County, takes that up to Cambria. There's gonna be an increase in traffic on that road, and the slightest road is a travesty as far as I'm concerned. And this hold-in place process was never discussed as an option by this committee. We went solely with what we were discussing. And then you had this little powwow amongst the people, and we're gonna go this route. This is a little bit on the hazy side as far as I'm concerned. I think that you can't prove it by me by a normal grind off, like a normal process that you're gonna raise the road. I don't buy that, not one damn bit.
Can I speak a minute?
Go ahead.
Sure. Okay, we got the cart a little bit before all this here. So, we had a sales pitch now, which is kind of after the fact. Okay, this report, that everyone's referring to was available at the end of December to Dodge County. It was available to this committee since December. We spent a lot of time talking about echelon paving and types of oil, and of course, this committee, talked about, you know, the value of competition in the marketplace, made some accommodations for pre-qualifications of contractors, whatever, to stimulate some competition, to get some better pricing. Because the big argument has always been, we don't have the money, we don't have the money, we don't have the money, we don't have the money. Now we borrow money, we have the money. So in order for the committee to make an informed decision, this information, in my opinion, should have been available to them and to us, myself, any other county board member, the public, whatever. But it wasn't. Okay, so here we are, put toothpaste back in the tube, because a dissimilar project to all the rest of the roads in construction method is included in a bid package, which corrupts the entire basket of apples in a certain bidding environment. This report doesn't include, when you talk about value engineering, we have a very good history with concrete pavement, and no one has discussed concrete on any of the roads. And it really kind of sucks, because we have a couple of very capable concrete paving contractors in Dodge County. I mean, just a weekend ago, my wife and I came back from Stone Bank on a Sunday, and we brought County Trunk Oil and it found Ashippin, and that thing is pristine. It's concrete, you know? Beautiful road, life cycle costs are fantastic. Initial costs might be one thing, but the life cycle costs, it's proven concrete is the best bang for the buck. Nobody's talking about that. So we have, in Dodge County, we have a history of all these experimental enterprises with asphalt paving dating back my entire lifetime. I could rattle off a number of different experiments, and about everyone has really not worked. Okay. Coal in place, if we could go back to the video and really pay attention to what you're seeing on the deal. The project on the video is not a pulverize and pave, which is what is proposed for BD. It is a mill project, okay? Where you just take the top layer off of the existing asphalt, they flop it to the side of the road. If you notice, they had a grader there to accommodate the equipment, and they roll the windrow of material and flatten it off to accommodate the equipment in the process. I pulled a set of plans and specs for this bid package for a reason. And I went and drove these projects to look at them through a contractor's eyes and how you would approach the entire road concept through a contractor's eyes. I drove on BB, and when I was out there, I never met a car. Not one car. Not a single one. And I went up and down the road a couple times, but I'll tell you what I did meet. I met intensive agriculture equipment and trucks, right? I met feed trucks, I met grain trucks, I met van trailers on semi-tractors, I met milk trucks. That's what I met on BB, okay? And what my fear is, when you talk about Crave Brothers, who has a presence on that road, talk about Normager, talk about the Roach family, and talk about everyone else that uses that road. Jeff Ferris just pointed it out, other people use it. It's not their road. But when it fails, when this experiment fails, people are gonna say, them trucks wrecked that road. That was a brand new road. And those trucks, those people with those trucks wrecked that road. And I'm very concerned about that. This particular job, as it's designed, has a lot of elements in it that have already been adjusted, okay? So first of all, we're gonna go in there and we're gonna mill off 2 inches, we're gonna haul it away, take it. Now I got a problem with that because the taxpayers purchased that material in the first place. And secondly, eventually, that road needs to be shouldered. out of an aggregate type material, right? And it's all hills and curves. And history will tell you that in the hills and curves, very difficult to maintain and hold the shoulder material up against the pavement. Either the traffic's rattling it out back onto the pavement surface where they're cutting a corner and the wheels are hitting the gravel and then it flies back out onto the pavement. And I ride a motorcycle, okay? I look out for that stuff. Some people don't. It's a problem, okay? Asphalt material, right? If you recrush it, and I've seen Dodge County Highway do it just a couple weeks ago, up at the Trenton shop, big, nice stockpile, rented a track crusher, backed it in there, threw the material through it, made a beautiful pile of material that can be reused, right? I endorse that practice, I do it myself, okay? Why can't we do that with these millings? No, we're gonna haul them away. I would suggest to you that on BB, on that job, you have the perfect site. You don't even have to rent a site, okay? To stockpile those millings and run them through the crusher, right onto the truck and out onto the shoulder. Or you reserve them for other things, right? You have soft soils. We know if you go directly east of there to County G, when that was redone a bunch of years ago, had soft soils, bad spots, what do you gotta do to correct them? You dig them out, you use stabilization fabric, you use large rock, you bridge the bad soils, you do what you gotta do to fix it, right? And you need aggregate to replace that, right? You want a similar aggregate that's gonna match the other stuff. Guess what would work best? Recrushed asphalt. It would match the other material on the job. And you have the site, you own it. It's that big, sweeping, wide intersection with County Road I. You just barricade one leg of that thing off, yeah, you're probably gonna have some restoration in there. Maybe you gotta put a little asphalt back on that pavement later, or clean it up or whatever. But you have a place where you can take those millings, back the truck in, build a stockpile, crush it out, reuse it, the taxpayer already owns it. But instead, the way we're looking at this is we're gonna go buy gravel to shoulder the roads, by the way, okay? We're gonna go buy it, and, a bunch of years ago, when County Road T fell apart, we bought shoulder material from a certain quarry. It didn't meet any kind of spec, it was basically mud, and they put it out there for shoulder mix. We got such a good deal on it. Of course, we did it ourselves. We reserved that work for ourselves at the highway department. I would suggest we need turnkey roads, right? We let these contractors bid the job complete, including the center line striping, the shouldering, the whole 9 yards, so that we get a true cost comparison and we can justify ownership of this equipment on our own, right? 450 grand for a line painting truck that only does latex paint. I would say, how about epoxy? Something that'll last more than one season. Something that'll last 5 to 6 years in a lot of applications. And it does. But we can't do that with our rig. We put down water-based paint, basically, and lasts about a year. Gotta do it again. And it's job security. And we complain about all these issues, right? About how we never have money. And the recipe is just always the same. It doesn't change. And we have an opportunity to change. But my biggest problem with this whole deal so far has been the fact there's been no communication to this committee of this information. And that to me is the biggest travesty in this deal. One of the reasons I requested the information is I knew it's available. If you say it's available, if you say you've done the study, I believe you have a study. I'm gonna ask for it, and I'm gonna read it, and I'm gonna understand it, you know? And, man alive, we gotta do this different. I would say, if I was king and ruler over this deal, is either you bid cold in place as an alternate, And the base bid should include your standard specification. And another thing I'd like to iterate here is, you're not gonna raise the road that significantly. You really aren't. And it's a rural road with very, very, uncommon entrance points. You know, you got a couple field entrances and a couple side roads, and in 10 miles, you got like nothing. Okay? And the slopes are not bad at all. At all, and they're not gonna get worse, except for maybe a couple of locations. Generally, you know, you get down by the river, Crawfish River, a couple of the big fills, whatever. But again, they can be corrected. And they can be corrected with something as simple as just grading. I mean, and I'm not talking about the slopes, I'm talking about moving the material around. Northeast Asphalt does it in the town of Beaverton all the time, transition grades. They got automatic controls, GPS on the grader, they set them babies up and they whistle that stuff down the grade, and it works fantastic. And we probably own it too here in Dodge County, I don't know. I'm not so sure that we use our tools that are in our box. Thank you.
On that presentation, on that milling, they make it sound as though all that stuff is gonna stay on that site. Now it's sounding like it's gonna get hauled off. So we're selling an asset that's owned by the county right now. So what kind of fuel are you gonna suck up hauling that 2 inch mill off? I mean, that's not what that presentation showed. That presentation didn't show driving and fill away.
Right.
That's the difference between the presentation that you presented here and what they really want to do is to grind it, pay the fuel tax, pay the gas guy that's selling the fuel, haul it to someplace, all stockpile it, give it to a road builder, for what, I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, that is an asset of the county right now. It should be used on that road, not the south.
That cold invoice is made for where there is no aggregate available. You go to certain geographic locations, you gotta truck aggregate miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. And in Dodge County, we are blessed, and even this job, there is a gravel pit on both ends of it, both ends of it. So, when the guy talks about on-site reuse of material,
Right.
then that's what we should do. We
Yes.
should use the stuff for milling off.
Go ahead, I'm in a meeting, I'm not tired.
Most of you people in this room know me. I'm Steve Pett, I'm the operations superintendent for the highway. I've got experience in the asphalt paving business prior to coming here since about 1995. I remembered a project that Jefferson County did, and I made some contact with them. And some of you will be familiar with this road. This is County Highway N. This was a cold-in-place recycled project that they did from 2000 to 2004. I watched this project happen because I was working for an asphalt paving contractor in that area at that time. Okay, this project started at County Highway B and went south past the quarry, very busy quarry, through Jefferson, from Jefferson to 106, and then from Highway 106 south to Whitewater. At that time, that was Jefferson County's busiest county road. Okay? The reason they did that road that way was so that it wouldn't come up any higher. In those years, that road has held up very well. And when I talked to Greg Keppel at Jefferson County here a couple weeks ago, kind of planning for this, you know, that they are very satisfied with how that road held up. And this year, in 21, they will be starting to pulverize and regrade portions of that road. They haven't done anything to it other than seal coat it twice. So it's a tried and true process. Just to show you and so you understand, everybody saw in the video, you saw the machine mill the asphalt up and put it in a windrow alongside. And then you saw the grader kind of flatten it off. That contractor that does that, W&K out of Milton, that's kind of their process So now when the mill moves over, it captures that windrow plus the material that's under it. I think when we spec this, and this just didn't happen overnight, it's in the spec. Every contractor that pulled the book has it in there, knows this is a really good process. You know, we wanted the 2 inches of surface to go on top in echelon, so we have that tight seam. When they do the bottom layer, they're taking it up, they're putting it right back down, just like the video showed. It's smooth, it's endless, very little disruption to traffic, and it's solid. I know for a fact how much asphalt is out there, because in the fall of 2019, I was there looking at all 95 of those test holes that we drilled in that 9-mile stretch of road. There's a lot of asphalt out there, and there's a fair amount of gravel base. This is a prime candidate for this. I don't really think it's not an experiment that we're just kind of doing this willy-nilly because of some recommendation from an engineer. It's been done all over, it's gonna be good, it's a good process.
I got a question for you, Steve.
Yep.
Okay, so this addendum with the 3/4 inch leveling layer, how are you gonna lay 3/4 inch lift with the size aggregate that's in the mix?
Well, that's, I guess, for the contractor to kind of tell us that. You know,
Well,
if
what
this,
does
it might not,
Steve, what does DOT say about the size of that aggregate and the thickness layer, the minimum thickness that you pay for that size aggregate?
I can't tell
Says
you
if
that.
I know you can't tell me that, but I can tell you, it's not 3/4 of an inch. It is not 3/4 of an inch.
For a leveling layer.
Excuse me, Jeff Schmidt, let Nathan respond, please.
For a 3/4 inch leveling layer, you are allowed to use that mix that we have in spec. You
Who
wouldn't use
pays,
that
who
for,
pays the overage on the tonnage?
you wouldn't use that mix for, your final layer, you use it for leveling. It's a different, specification.
I understand what you're saying, but, okay, so you're trying to lay it at 3/4 of an inch, and when you can't do it, and you gotta lay it at 1.25 inches or whatever thickness, right? If it's by the ton, who pays for the overage on the tonnage? And how many tons per half inch, let's call it, of asphalt on that length of road? Times, let's say, $50 a ton, what does that cost the taxpayer? Can you tell me?
$50 a ton.
Yeah.
We have leveling lift and wedging in many contracts, that's very common.
Yeah.
That's why it's a leveling lift, because it's not perfect surface, it needs to be corrected, that's very common. And the owner pays by the, that's everyday stuff.
And then my next question is, where's the value engineering that shows me the life cycle cost of this method in comparison to our standard specification? Where is it? It's not in the report, I can tell you that. It's not in there.
No, it's not. We haven't done one of those on asphalt project 16 years I've been here.
Okay.
So I didn't know we were required to.
So how do we determine one is better from the other? Unless we do a comparison, and the only way to compare it is to either separate the method or the type of paving away from the standard, either by an alternate bid, right? So that this committee can analyze the financial impact, right? Make a choice, make an informed choice. A direct comparison between our standard spec and this new technology to Dodge County, right? These people need information to make the decision, that's all I'm asking about, okay? Or, why don't we just separate it and bid it as a separate project and throw another road on the pile? Because Lord knows we got plenty of them.
Please. All right, I just would like to get us moved ahead here. We could debate this all day long and go nowhere. A lot of liberties have been taken on a lot of accusations that I don't think have any validity in this discussion. No crimes have been committed. I want to establish that. All of those projects were done by our staff with no action from the committee. Our man tried to start explaining Golden Place with this project under his project updates a month ago, 6 weeks ago, got interrupted. Whole discussion went another direction, he didn't get to speak. All of those were done, with no committee involvement or committee action. We tried to keep the committee informed. It's not the committee's job to design roads. It's ours. 5 of us, staff members, went together on these roads, every road we're looking at this year, made our analysis, put in our viewpoints from our perspective and our role in this, and came up with what I think is a very good plan. Research has been done, we hired a company to go and give us some guidance on the subgrade, or the subsurface conditions, because that's the last place you wanna guess. We've got some pretty solid information to work with, I think we have a good program. I think if the committee's interested in alternative, he's got and showed you an equal alternative that could be considered in the bidding process. But I think it's time to come to some decisions and get this thing bid and scheduled.
I agree that's a possibility of holding place, but it should be handled as a total separate bid. Compared to what information that we got on this board and on this committee, we were not even thinking of this process, we weren't presented with it. But if it's a thought process that maybe we need to use, it's gotta be bid separately. That's the way I look at it. Because all you're doing, when you mishmash this together, you're affecting the person that's bidding on the whole project, now you're taking this project away. So now that it affects his numbers as far as, because he thought he was gonna have the whole job, and now you're changing the whole thing from the vendor's perspective.
We don't write specs for vendors.
Pardon?
We don't write specs for vendors. We write specs for Dutch County roads.
Well, you don't run it for bidding process either.
Anybody can hire the same subcontractor to do this cold-in-place recycling. That's an option for any bidder. It's a subcontract, no different than the curb and gutter. I don't think the pavers are gonna pour their own curb and gutter. The options are there, this is doable. An alternate bid is a separate bid. If you wanna consider that a separate bid or a separate spec, that's what it is. It would open them both. We read everything that day and bring them to this committee for review. I think what's being requested is doable, let's do it.
We were presented 2 options here, you know, to consider the CIR and consider the 5.5-inch overlay method. My recommendation, let's put the 5.5-inch as an alternate and bid them both and see where it takes us.
CIR.
CIR and, yeah, the 5.5.
I think if you do that, Jeff, I think that's all I'm asking for.
The CIR is already part of the base bid, so we'd have to issue an addendum as an alternate bid that would include minimum overlay 5.5. That way, the contractor could then,
Why wouldn't you do a FDR alternate, similar to the other roads, and you wouldn't raise the road, because like on County I, you're milling off 2 inches and you're doing FDR. What's the strength difference between FDR? As a taxpayer and a contractor in this county, there's a few things on the job that, you know, I guess as a taxpayer, I think the price difference between FDR, the traditional spec, and cold in place should be out in the open. Because I do not think you're saving any money on that. There's a few other things on it, you know, with your slides that should be noted, but, yeah, the 4LT leveling layer, there could be issues with, cracking stones, trying to lay that thin. I've had my subcontractors reach out to me and they're concerned that it could use without the data of, you know, the CRI, having the mixed design, you know, we could be maybe possibly looking at a different grade of oil that would work better. How's that gonna be addressed? The millions are always reused to answer Jeff's, you know, question about what happens when millions, when they get exported out the job. Well, you're using that and you're recycling that back into your mix. With the FDR process, you could have cracks show back through because you're not gonna be all the way through the asphalt. You know, if you're bringing up the cracking issue, you know, when you have 8 to 10 inches of existing pavement, you're not getting to the bottom. The DOT also has issued a statement, you know, along the way that said CRI is a very good option, but also it needs to be considered in relation to where hot mix asphalt plants are located. I guess in our eyes, we really are indifferent to, you know, which process, but I think as a taxpayer, we owe it to the taxpayer to explore the option of one process versus the other. And then also in your slides, you also do not compare the FDR versus the holding place recycling, you're just looking at mill and overlay. So I guess that's kind of the couple comments, you know, that we have, and we did send out an email asking for information on, you know, some of the design of CRI, you know, and basically that's what that's driving at, that ourselves would like to know.
All right, well, in terms of pulverizing, you're talking about pulverizing and injecting?
No, I'm saying, like, on BB, you could have the same spec as like what you have on I, in the bed package, where you're milling off 2 inches and then you do an FDR, you know, full depth, just pulverize. What's the strength difference between a pulverize and the standard asphalt spec versus CRI?
Pulverizing, okay, you see the number up there is 0.32 for cold in place recycling. Pulverizing, it really depends on how much aggregate gets mixed in. The more aggregate that gets mixed in, the lower the number. But you're looking at 0.1 if you get a certain level of aggregate mixed in because it doesn't have the strength. So you can multiply that out and you can see you're gonna start reducing your strength number.
But what I'm saying is, you're gonna have 5 inches of asphalt, or whatever the thickness of asphalt, when you combine that with the aggregate beneath, how does that compare? That's the only thing that I was
Well, if
looking
you
at.
put more asphalt
versus
on, right, but at the same time, your road's coming up. You're gonna have to keep that pulverizing layer thick in order to get your number high enough. And then you put asphalt on top of that, you're coming up now. And that's what we're trying to avoid on highway.
You're talking 3 inches, 2 inches, you know, depending on how much you're milling off. When you look at, like, county. What was that?
Because we were milling off 2 and putting back 2 plus 11.
Right, but what I'm saying is, how much does your road actually go up when you do FDR, like what Jeff Barris is saying? You know, if you're milling off 2 inches like on the spec on County I, you know, and you're putting back, you know, the standard spec, you're talking inches.
Whatever the inches, whatever the thickness of the pavement can be called for
Yeah.
on that road, for instance, I is 4 inches, plus there's always, as you know, there's always a 20% fluff factor, you know, when you do the full depth pulverization. Because it doesn't go back in the same way it came out, so, yeah, you gain, you know, 4.5 inches maybe.
Right, and in the end, you're coming up and you're losing your strength because you're not using the cold in place number.
I think there really could be, with the cold in place recycling and the method that's done now with the paver and with the automatic grade control on the paver, you know, there may not, depending on how good that paver is and how good the guys are on it, there could be very little, if even a need at all, for a leveling course.
I was wondering, do we really, is that leveling layer really critical?
I don't think we want a provision for it, but as Steve said, if they've got automatics on that paper, put that cold in place back in,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be much of a factor.
And that's what we know on DB, is that there's a lot of material there to work with, so you know, we're taking off the 2 inches that's gonna become the new 2 inches of surface, and then working with the 4 inches below that for the recycle process. It really should go pretty well. I mean, they should be able to handle it. Now granted, they're putting back 4 inches, so compaction is gonna be the key.
The research I was able to do on this CIR, you know, when you've got spots in PV that are 10 inches, and we're milling out, you're going on top of some of that asphalt, the CIR process reduces the radiant cracking that's gonna come through that. I did some independent research on this too, and that was one of the key factors of the CIR, is it reduces the radiant cracking. Iowa's been using it successfully. They've got roads that are over 20 years old with this process, and it's been successful. Granted, it is a newer process in Wisconsin, but it's not newer process in general. And it's getting painted here like some kind of a snake oil treatment, and it's truly not.
Well,
It really
it's
is.
a step-there process, Jeff, that probably works in areas that don't have gravel. We are loaded with gravel in Dodge County.
We're-
We take the same project from to Michigan where they're all sand, it's probably a doable deal there. But we got
Yeah,
gravel in
I
Dodge County.
understand we, our aggregate is more plentiful. I guess we're looking at what's going to be a cost-effective option should be. So regardless of whether it's aggregate here or not, it just seems like the experts are telling us we should at least consider this. And we're giving the committee an option to consider this versus a 5.5, which the 5.5 is likely going to have more reflective cracking sooner than the CIR from, at least from the research I've been doing, talking to people and trying to come up with whether this is should be a viable process for this road or not. The comment was softer soil. Well, poor soil conditions is a good place for CIR. Well, the soil conditions for a good part of that road are not the greatest.
So the milling that's gonna take to go to CIR, does that stay on site or does it get hauled off?
There's 2 inches gets hauled off, which gets put back into the new asphalt, and the 4 inches gets milled and reconstituted and laid back down as the base layer of
And all
asphalt.
that material, does that stay ownership of Dodge County? Does it end up in
I guess
someone else's?
I can only assume that the contractor takes into account in his bidding process the value of the material that's milled up, and it gets recycled and brought back in and through the system. I'm sure that would be the case. There's value in that material, whether it remains in the ownership of Dodge County or it becomes the ownership of the contractor doing the work. That number has to be taken into account as this bidding process goes through. Any other committee members, any comments or thoughts as we're digging into this thing?
I like the idea of the alternate. That I will tell you, the direct comparison, I think, will be very beneficial to the committee members and everyone else, okay?
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to have the alternate bid. I just, from my information, the other type of alternate you were talking about, what's the difference between that and hot mix?
The FDR is full depth reclamation, no rejuvenation of anything that's there, just a milling, a pulverizing of all the material, graded out, and pave over the top. But we do that and have done that in a number of roads. It has some success. It's not equivalent in strength to CIR, as Nathan's trying to explain here. It's not equivalent, it's an option. And we are doing that on some of the other roads. That's not taken off the table, just not considered a BB based on
Based on the truck.
an investigation.
It can't be strong.
Correct.
Yeah, it can't be strong if you put enough asphalt on. That's why we're able to do it on the roads that handle so it can be strong alternative, it's just in this case, we don't have the room to pump any higher.
And we knew on I, for instance, that we could go.
You know, on BB though, there are sections where the ditch is almost level with the road.
Right.
And if you go last year on County M over here, there's sections that are definitely very, very steep, and that was still done with a pulverizer. So it's kind of a pot calling kettle black.
Well, we don't want to replay of Highway M, and not all of BB is flat. We don't want to respect station by station different treatment. I don't think you'd like that either.
No, I'm just
It's a
saying
good
that.
end-to-end solution for a very busy, heavy traveled road, I think we have it. An alternative is welcome, because either will perform appropriately and adequately for us.
The other thing I encourage is somehow we have to account over time for the life cycle counts or costs of this project. Right? So somehow, you gotta keep track of the data going forward to justify doing it in the future. You follow what I'm
Well
saying?
taken, well taken.
Right.
And that's the case with all of these roads that we had before. I mean, we monitor them, we watch them, we do our best to determine what's performing and what isn't. We don't learn if we don't grow.
Right, but, you
Try
know,
new things.
I've been here through the foam injection and all of that stuff, and we've had, you know, there's areas where it's burned.
Oh, no, it does, we're
Right.
all in the right location.
And there's areas where it's been a disaster for us, but then, of course, you know, they'll point the fingers at other things, right?
Well, I want to say that we have a good history with AET, and that's why we brought them back. Years ago, we had them come in and analyze 25 miles of road. They gave us a report. There was one road I could sleep at night thinking of taking their recommendation in this TW out here, North 33. They told us to do a mill and fill. I had a very hard time with that. What we did, and we did on a number of their recommendations, is take the recommendation and just increase that pavement layer a little more so I can sleep with it. Awesome. None of their recommendations to date have failed us. That's why we brought them back. That's why we said, we're gonna do a lot of work, let's take the guesswork out of this and get somebody to do a good investigation for us and give us some guidance. We can always deviate from it, we can always go above their recommendation, but it's a good base. It's a good basis, a good direction. That's why we wrote what we did here, because we've got a good history with these people, and I think they do a good job doing the investigation and giving us recommendations.
The other thing I wanna interject is, somehow, we gotta standardize some things, because, you know, what's coming in the future. We've hired the consultant for the strategic plan. We've had this idea that we're gonna have a purchasing, right? We have these procurement policies, things of that nature. And future administrations are gonna follow those guidelines. So it's very important that, you know, everyone think about this going forward. This isn't just for today, or this bid set, or whatever. But we have to look at everything with a critical eye and get some uniformity and some consistency with how we, you know, approach obtaining the bids and allowing competition in the marketplace and getting the best bang for our buck and things of that nature. Because a purchasing agent that might be in charge of, you know, advertising the bids, letting the bids, whatever, in the future, may not have all this knowledge, right?
Point well taken. Dave, you had a comment?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to, release an addendum for an alternate mixed asphalt.
No overlay by the net.
Equivalent alternative, equivalent alternative.
All right. We have a motion by Dave to include an option for the mill and overlay 5.5 inches as an addendum to the bidding for County BB. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dick.
How do you do that with the bond, though? Okay? If you assume that one will be more, how do they calculate the bid bond? Don't usually do it the opposite, don't usually put the higher value in as your base bid, and then they bond the whole thing,
I've
right?
seen it either way, I've seen it with deductions, ads. I don't think it matters, I think the bond is based on the final contract.
Okay.
We're gonna choose one alternate or the other and determine contract amount, that's what the bond will be set at.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Dale, you
So the
comment?
addendum is gonna state that Golden Place is the secondary option, that's basically.
No, it's actually opposite.
It's the opposite, right? The Golden Place is already there, we're putting an addendum to allow an alternative option.
On BB.
Correct.
The committee will have the choice to choose either option based on results of that.
His proposal then to follow the same program on all the other roads.
No,
Only on this
this is
one.
only on DP.
Golden Place is only being proposed on BB.
I realize that, but he's proposing is to follow this all the way on with the mill and overlay. Follow that same mill and overlay and mill and overlay.
This is only BB.
This is actually a tighter spec on this one than it is on this other, I believe.
Correct.
So basically, I'm a little bit confused on what your addendum is actually stating. You're actually stating that you want to do mill and overlay
There's a,
What's an alternate bid on mill and
as an
overlay?
alternate, because the way the bid is now, it's Golden Place on BB. So mill and overlay as an alternate on that
Pulverize.
road. My question is, what would be the difference if you ask for Golden Place as an alternate for any?
there's already on this one that we got, we're just gonna put an alternate with it.
Any other discussion, comments? Dale, do you have anything to add on that? All right, I'll call the question. All those in
10 years ago on the town road, I moved to the Colton place. And all we did was put a, this regular wheat gravel on it, and that road is perfect. It heaves up, it cracks, and it seals itself back in the spring. You drive by my road, you see very little crack going. That's 25 years.
No, it's tried and true process, there's no question about it. It's just, they don't do it. It hasn't been done a lot around here. Certainly has in other places, very successfully. Okay. Things back up to, good. Sure. Nate, were you here for any special?
Vegetation, right away spraying.
All right, we can move to that one. Roadside herbicide application 2021. Let's do that and make, get to work on doing other stuff. Thank you.
All right, same, most of you know me, but anyone that doesn't, Nate Minnick. I'm the supervisor for the western half. Thank you. Western half, of the county. Would you like one too? Sure. Interested? If you remember, last summer, we had a company called Core Control come in, and they did a test section of spraying a right of way on County Highway KW for us. That was a new road at the time from State Highway 26 into the village limits of Lowell. Now they sprayed a concoction or a formula. That company worked closely with the state. In a few pages back, you'll find a little packet here, Sauk County. They did a lot of different things, and Brian actually got to go to the Sauk County workshop. But they sprayed the right of way and did two things. One, it killed off the invasive weed species in the ditches, most common around here we have as well.
I'm expecting a call from the back, I guess, give up my phone in the truck, so I'll do that.
Yep.
What? I'm not exactly sure I brought it along, so.
So, we have wild parsnip everywhere in the ditches. You see it, it's a yellow.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. That yellow weed, it grows everywhere, quite honestly, over the last, since I started popping around here, when we mow, we're just spreading it around. It's got 1 million seeds on the plants, and, we're just making it worse. It's everywhere now. They also mixed in with their spray formula, PGR, plant growth regulator. What that does, it just suppresses the growth of the native grasses. Now, they sprayed that last year on May 4th. We did not mow it before that. We watched it all summer long. The committee here, you guys saw some slides last fall what that was, but it did awesome. It killed off 90-some% of the parsnip. It left our native grasses, it left the milkweed for butterflies, all the good things for our pollinators. And that PGR did work. We didn't mow it till late summer. I measured it, and in the slides you guys saw, we sprayed. It was a great experiment because one side of the road had the PGR applied to it, the other side did not. The side that didn't have it applied was 3 feet tall, the grass, at the end of July, beginning of August, it was that I measured it. The side that had it sprayed to it was basically give or take a foot, nice and low. So it did its job, and if you look through, there's a plethora of information in the Sauk County workshop. There's tons of data in there.
Pretty good.
They got some graphs and whatnot, but it basically shows the same thing that I'm just telling you here today. Now, a lot of counties are starting to want to go to spraying their right-of-way ditches because they have the same problems we do. Mowing, A, is costly, and B, the parsnip, Phragmites, the list goes on of invasive weeds that are just starting to slowly take over. In fact, they call it liquid mowing, spraying this stuff. Instead, today we mow our ditches twice a year. And our mowers are 15 feet wide, give or take. When we spray, we could eliminate one, maybe more mowings than that, depending on how often we would do this. And I can't tell you exactly how far we can spray, but Fort Control will have a similar setup to them. They were spraying 30 feet wide, so they're doubling in one pass what we can do with the mowers. Now, up on, you have it here in front of you too, but up on the screen there, I picked out a whole bunch of roads, kind of tried to spread it out around the county, that I would like to try and spray this year with your blessing. Come to 116 lane miles of road, okay? Now, on that first sheet you have here, I crunched some numbers, what it would cost us to mow that, there you see that $14,063, and talking with our mower operators of how fast they can go. You know, they're typically mowing 3 to 4 miles an hour depending on conditions. Obviously, it takes them a little bit to go up and around driveways and culverts and intersections and such. And that 210 acres, that's about roughly, just to give you an idea of how much that would be that they're actually mowing. Now spraying, you can see the cost there, that's the chemicals included. I got that figured out at basically just call it 4 days it would take us to do that. And obviously, basically just doubling the acres of what I think we can spray for a whip. You know, and they're gonna be spraying 10 to 12, maybe 14 miles an hour. So there's a cost savings and there's a time savings to do that. Another big issue with this wild parsley, Nathan, if you want to just throw, that stuff is nasty. If any of you have gotten it on you or know someone, it burns, you blister, no one wants to go in there. I have here, you know, I talked to Jefferson County and Columbia County, two of our neighbors, they spray all of their stuff, okay? As far as a notice, this is something that I typed up that I think we could put on our website, maybe we put it in the paper or on the radio station, whatever, just so that people know what's going on, they see salt spray and there's questions. Columbia County, they just simply put a notice, something similar to this on their website to let people know what's going on. Jefferson County doesn't do anything, they just spray, they say it's all right, we were spraying it. I think it's right to put something up and give some forenotice out there. You can see the formula, their herbicides that we would be using. Myself and 5 other guys went through all the training and testing. We tested out for spraying right-of-ways in natural areas here this winter, so we're all certified. Those pictures, you know, show some of what they can do. We've had several guys here at the highway department that got into this stuff, whether it's a mechanic working on the mowers, getting it. One of our culvert guys got it on them, you know, not literally even from the plant, but from the roots where we dug through it for a cross culvert. He doesn't even know he's touching it. His arms were nasty and he was off for a while. I don't feel right having this stuff everywhere and telling my guys, well, you go do this and go down in the ditch and do all this. It's everywhere. I don't like it. So, I also have a list of, you know, we have some organic farmers here, and obviously they wouldn't want that stuff sprayed near, you know, their farm fields. We would send a similar letter out to them. What we can do is have a mutual, you know, written agreement. If they so want, you post flags up typically along the property or right away adjacent to their farms. We don't spray there, so stay away. So it's something I think we need to look at. It's a cost savings, it's a time savings, and it's quite honestly a safety thing. It's gaining popularity. I talked to some of the UW extension, I guess I'll call them experts here down in Madison that actually did some of this training. They said, yeah, this is really growing popularity. Like I said, they call it liquid mowing. And they said, man, we need to get some more stuff out on this because it's more and more counties are wanting to do it. The state's wanting to do it. They're doing these workshops and trials all over the place. So it's something I'd like to try, and we had good results on KW. I think there's opportunity here to save some money and do some good.
I'd just like to add to that, I was at that Sauk County field day that is highlighted in your handout. Put on by the university people, it was very well attended, very well done, a lot of research has gone into this at the university level. I was very impressed with it, I didn't know how selective and how successful these applications could be today, I learned a lot, I was impressed, I think it's probably the only practical way we have of trying to control the invasives, which are really becoming an issue. They really are, and I know we've had a contact from a lot of our ag residents asking us, when and what are we gonna do about our right of way, because we have many, many acres abutting theirs. They pay a lot of money to control the invasives on their property, and we're basically doing nothing. Actually, when we mow it, we're actually spreading that seed and making it worse. And that's proven time and time again. Mowing actually spreads this and makes it worse. So I don't know how else we could try to control this invasive species takeover, if you will, without some kind of proactive approach like Nate's proposing.
Can't control my person, I don't know.
Me too.
So I got a question, what about Canada thistles, will these herbicides also affect?
Yes, yep, takes them on too.
What I really noticed, and what a lot of us were concerned with, obviously the pollinator concern is real, and we're actually in a pilot program with the state to help pollinators on 26. All the way down from, that's County from 60 down to Painesville, I believe. We're part of that, but, you know, learning what we can and can't do to help pollinators and the plant species that they need for their survival. What Nate's proposing, and I saw it firsthand up in South County, very selective and very successful at not affecting the desirable plants and taking out the invasives. Not sure how they're doing it, but it was very impressive, and I saw it firsthand. The PGR was also very noticeable. You'll see in the slides as well as what we learned last year at KW. We can reduce that frequency of mowing and keep things safer and keep.
I see you went back to the spot treatment for Roundup, what was the reason for that?
That's an option, if they had a spot they couldn't maybe get broadcasting spraying from the road, they could go out there and they could either basically hand pluck some small groups of parsnip or spray it with a backpack sprayer or something like that they couldn't reach or.
This is not their basic formula for that, this is.
Yeah, that's a separate,
That for getting trees or something like that.
sorry, say it again for.
For different plants or something.
Yes, yeah, if they had something else, so yeah. No, when they spray this, it's just, you start your end there, you shut off when you get to a lawn, an intersection, or
How often did we spray last year in our test plot?
just once, one time.
They do it 4 times?
No, they should be, where are you looking?
At the summary of South County.
Well, some of what they did at university levels, they had very small plots and they did many
Okay,
different
sure.
types of treatments. Some of it was the backpack sprayer and just selecting certain species to, you know, treat by hand. And then they had to do it more frequently. Some things weren't emerged because it didn't all emerge at the same time, so they go back frequently to monitor what's emerging and treat it as it emerged. So I think another thing that to mention is the movement sprayer technology that they typically use for this has 2 nozzles. One is trained short, maybe only 10 feet. Then the second one goes from 8 out to 20, 25, depending on what configuration you're able to get. And I think the reason I'm mentioning that is it's not all of our right of ways necessarily need or should have that full width treatment.
You gotta remember when it varies a long way.
Yep, and the advice that we were given in part of this training was, you have 2 people, you have a driver and you have a passenger, that Boom sprayers right behind his door, he's got the controls. When it's appropriate, you use full width, when it's less, you shut it down, when you're approaching finished lawn areas or anything that you don't need to spray, the organic flags, you shut them both off. It's very instantaneous and it is easy to learn to be effective if you're sitting basically right on that boom sprayer. Yeah, of course.
Early morning and late evening, this kind of spray.
And and they said do it before any of the crops emerge. If you do it before the crops emerge, you're much safer. Don't even try it after everything's out because, yeah, the drift is real.
I got a comment. This requires a two-man process versus what we have now, the one. I really question any time savings at all. Another thing I really question, when you get involved with this chemical spraying, what's the long-term effects of a possibility of an employee coming along and saying, I was affected by this, and now we're in the soup? I don't know how many of you are aware of this program going on with Roundup right now, the class action lawsuit. When you start messing with these chemicals, and you put an employee in a position of claiming that he was affected, we're not looking at that from a time standpoint either. Another thing we're not looking at, when we talk time, savings and time, that's really just nothing but a bunch of smoke, because unless somebody actually goes home early, you're still paying for the time. So when you start putting two people on this thing, in all reality, in my mind, you're doubling your cost.
And how fast it sprays?
Yeah, well, we'll have two people in a truck running it, but we're gonna spray that same amount of property. Actually, we're gonna spray more than what the mower's gonna get, and
Is it gonna cover the labor cost of that extra person?
yeah, it's right there in the front. It's gonna take us 3.9 days, I figured, to spray that much versus mowing 11.6. We'll be done sooner, even though it'll be two guys versus one. We're still ahead, we're saving money. Now I can use those guys to put in a truck and haul gravel or do a pipe or crack fill or whatever it may be, instead of all summer long, I have guys dedicated to the big tractor mowers that are doing the ditches. And as soon as they get done with round one, they go into round two because the grass never stops growing. So that's where the savings is gonna be. We're still paying for the day, like you say, but I can use it for something else now.
There's years we do 3 more.
Yes, there are years we have to do 3. And maybe another cost, today we have 6 mowers. Maybe if we get into some of this, if you get ahead and don't need to mow as much, maybe we can drop 1 or 2 of those mowers. So.
Yeah, a couple things, so, I understand what everybody's talking about here, yeah, parsnip it's a problem, okay, I've had it about every summer. I get exposed to it, it's what I do, but, at the end of the day, the herbicide really isn't the only way to control it. When you talk about mowing, one of the problems is the mowing gets accomplished after it's gone to seed. So there are recommendations actually to mow earlier and more frequently.
You can control it.
You can control it.
Yes.
Without chemical
You can do it with mowing, but it's a small window, and with the mowing.
I get it.
Miles,
So-
it's hard to.
Okay, but you're looking, again, we're always looking at things the way we're used to doing them, right? So, Jeff touched on Roundup, okay? There are other ag chemicals that have also been extremely restricted. I grew up on a farm, I can remember my grandpa, when he had to rinse the atrazine jugs, right? Well, we can't waste it, we gotta use it, so you take that, you fill the jug, and then you go around the buildings and you pour it around, to keep the weeds back, right? Well, atrazine's pretty majorly restricted and regulated, and, at the time, it was the miracle drug, right, to kill the weeds. So that's been an issue. Now, you read about the major, problems with firefighting foam, okay? Major exposures with that, Truax Field and a bunch of other locations in Wisconsin are heavily contaminated with the chemicals that were within that firefighting foam. In fact, I don't know if anyone researched our tire fire location, if that's the same material we used, right? We might have a liability exposure, and at the time, the stuff was marketed as being the latest, greatest, best alternative for putting out a fire.
Just so you know, Jeff, it was what we used
Yep.
out there, and the EPA did all the test wells, tested the water, everything, it's all signed off, it's clear.
So far.
Right?
You know what I'm saying?
Adams County is clear.
Right.
EPA is.
And I also understand, because, I grew up in the landfill business, when you talk about groundwater monitoring and things of that nature, okay, the preventative action limits, the enforcement standards, all of that stuff changes with the advancement of technology and the ability to detect heavy metals and chemicals and things of that nature, okay? So that all changes. They don't stay the way they are today. And that's how we get to this deal with the potential buildup of chemicals in our environment. Now, like I said, I grew up, I'd be of the same opinion. Let's cut her loose and let's spray like crazy. My wife, on the other hand, okay, she's the other way, you know? And, you know, I don't mind dandelions, and I don't mind Creepy Charlie, and I don't mind all the things that are in my lawn that are offensive to my neighbors that have to, you know, feel the need to spray every other week to control every weed known to man. I do have a concern with release of the materials. I do have a concern with exposure to the employees. I do understand the benefit of not having that stuff out there. In the comparisons to Sauk and Jefferson County, again, very small geographic counties. Not that many highway miles, right?
You said Columbia.
I thought you said Sauk County.
Well, Sauk is one example
Right.
of the data, but Jefferson and Columbia are the two
Yeah.
nexus that do all this work.
Yeah, and of course, again, you know, if you look at Columbia or Sauk, I mean, population-wise, we got, what does Dane County do? We have a lot of
Dane.
influence from that county, right?
Yeah,
And a
Columbia.
lot of folks over there, you mentioned spray, and I'll tell you what, you better run for the hills.
Yeah, Columbia County actually sprays for Dane.
They
They
do.
spray a lot of their stuff, yeah. And as far as the employees being exposed to chemicals, again, we're certified, we're been trained, they'll have proper PPE. All those chemicals are, you know, overseen by EPA, they're all regulated, they're all, you know, we're not mixing up some home brew, it's.
But
it's
EPA
all legit
doesn't
stuff.
show up with the lawyers in the courtroom.
No, I'm not saying, I mean, who knows what happens 10 years down the road,
Right.
no one knows, but it's what we know and what we have today.
I get it.
Europe has used this product for years, they use it on their lawns for whole back, they don't sell it to anyone over there.
Golf courses use it.
I'll tell you, George Hekmovich and my dad, you know, they'd have these conversations about this stuff, right? Because they're always dealing with the DNR and the EPA or whatever. And the same thing would come out of every conversation about how every bottle container we use, we spray it, squirt it on our body, on our lawns, we ingest it, we do everything known to man. Then we throw the empty container in the trash can, it goes to a landfill, and now it's bad. You know, it just doesn't make sense.
We've got committee members here that are licensed, what do you think? Yeah, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I just sprayed herbicides my whole life, I mean, I'm still spraying, you know, so herbicides can never be used safely.
Oh, I know that.
And most of the lawsuits are involved people that are not following label instructions.
They never read their license.
So, I got a question on glyphosate. Do you know what weed they were, when they were spot spraying, what they were after? Was it Phragmites?
For the glyphosate,
Yeah.
I think in this scenario, it was mostly wild parsnip that they were going after.
Why not use the other products?
They were just trying to get a whole plethora of data of what works and doesn't, and the cost and the time.
I got a comment.
Right, glyphosate is basically Roundup.
It is.
Right, and that would, you know, they're trying to keep the native stuff too, and not kill the native grasses.
That's the danger of glyphosate. 'cause it
Right,
kills everything.
yes, exactly.
This is stuff, I had a property in Jefferson many years ago, and the utility got the bright idea to take a spray around the electrical, substation across the street from my house.
Yep.
They had a rural area that they took care of and a city. And they used that spray in the rural areas to take care of brush around along the lines. So they got the bright idea, the administrator in the electrical thing decided that we're gonna spray around this electrical substation. Okay, fine and dandy. 2 days later, my trees died, two of my trees died, my neighbor's garden died. I went down to the utility and asked him what they sprayed, and were they licensed to spray. He gave me a bunch of shit. I took a leaf to to the UW extension, they did an analysis on that damn thing. They gave me a chemical report about as thick as my hand about why this stuff is illegal in the city limits. I took that back over to that dumb Pollock, and I told him, I says, this stuff is not legal in the city limits. You know, at the end of the day, he wanted to know how many trees I wanted to buy. I told him I don't want to buy any. If this tree comes back, you're paying for it. But my question, is this stuff legal in the city limits? If you're gonna go into a village limits, is it legal in them areas? You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying, well, we wouldn't be doing any spraying in any villages or cities, I think this is all outside the rule.
Well, I mean, the chemical analysis was done on the leaf. UW extension sent it to Madison, did the study, came back, and they said, illegal in the city. Here they are using it. Some brain donor made a decision to use it.
Well, the stuff that.
You got about that tall when I was done.
Right, the stuff that they'd be spraying around those, they don't want leaves, they don't want anything, that's kill it all type of stuff.
Well, I
Some
really,
stations, but-
you know, when you're talking spraying, you better be prepared for a little bit of political wind. I mean, I could take it either way as far as the spraying goes. But I know I got a lot of greenies in my neighborhood. You start spraying, it's gonna.
They got an opportunity to opt out if they don't wanna have their right of way sprayed, is that the way I understand it? Maybe.
But it's not their right away, it's public's right away.
Right,
Right?
it's,
It's public, I get it, but.
right.
If they have.
I did, last year when you talked about spraying, and these herbicides that are listed, Plateau, Open Site, Escort, I took the liberty of going on EPA registration, reading over registration, and those are some fairly safe herbicides. They really are. And they're meant, and that's what they design to do,
know
it's for revenue.
but you gotta sell it to the public that's gonna be living next to it. That's what I'm getting at as far as how acceptable they're gonna be. Some lady's gonna see my kid rides his bike, and I mean, all I'm warning you is that you could be opening up a real kettle of fish.
Brian, you have a comment?
Yeah, I don't take any of this lightly either, and that's why we've done our research and homework and went the route of training and certifying our people, because if we do this, we want to be taking every precaution we can and be respectful of what's going on, but let's take a look at Dutch County, we're very rural. How many acres are getting sprayed
Right.
annually versus what we have for acreage in our right of way? We have a responsibility to maintain our right of way, this is one option. And the other thing, and this one really disturbed me when I had younger kids. I remember the approach of the gypsy moths, and the solution to that was planes flying over cities,
Oh, yeah.
spraying trees. Is it right, is it wrong, is it necessary, is it not? You know what, sometimes it's not my decision to make, I had concerns. It's done, we're being sprayed every which way, right or wrong, so to single this out, say this one's bad, don't do it, without an alternative, is a struggle for me, we have to do something. The spray is a potential hazard, the parsnip is a real hazard. And it's not just our employees, it's people, Schmidt over there getting in it, people's kids. You know, we have roadside, adopt a highway people with kids and grandkids, and they're out in it. And you know what I tell them? Yeah, you're supposed to, we encourage, the program is 3 times a year. But I'm saying do it early and late. Don't even take your kids around this stuff. It's that bad now. You can't identify it, you can't keep kids. It's bad, it's really, really spreading. We have an obligation to do something.
What kind of equipment expense is gonna add to performance function?
Minimal. We have the quad axle dump trucks with the inserts, tanks that we use for anti-icing. We need to add the boom sprayer and the controls in the cab.
So it's gonna be a quad axle dump truck going down the road to do the
Yes.
spraying?
Yep.
Did you figure out what's it cost to push them around versus one of the lawnmowers?
So here,
Yeah, it's
All
all,
that year.
it's all figured into this cost. It's labor, equipment, and spray.
I'm not opposed to that idea, but don't misunderstand. I'm warning you is that you could be dealing with some people that are gonna be very pissed off over this. Very pissed
we want to
off.
do our best to share with them what we're doing and why. We've got opposition to everything we do, a load of salt, but it's here. Everybody has different opinions.
Dave, any thoughts or comments you'd like to share?
What's our county health nurse?
Excuse me, Jeff, Dave's got the floor right now.
you know, I sprayed, I think it's a reasonable alternative. Do it correctly. I see that in their test, they use dicamba. I wouldn't use dicamba. It drifts way too much. Yeah, you gotta stay away from that. You know, I think you're gonna find out, you're gonna have to spray early in the morning before the winds come up.
With the dicamba,
Yep.
in the time frame that they're spraying, it's not as serious. If you spray dicamba in July, that, you're asking for trouble.
Before crops, emerge,
Right,
probably.
early in the season like that, probably less than.
Shouldn't need to be used all cows or. And follow the rules, use the surfactant, there's a reason for it.
There's a reason for
Yeah, right.
Well, even in the case I was talking about, they even got so far at that extension and analysis, they even got so far as the day that this thing was done, and they also had copies of the weather report where the winds were coming out of, that's how the touch that got.
Yeah, we would do
As far
the
as-
same thing.
We facing
I
that too. I mean, you know, I live on QQ and I'm telling you, I got wind all the damn time. I really find it hard to believe that you're gonna find the right time when there's no wind out in the rural areas. I mean, wind in the rural areas is totally different than wind in Juneau.
And we all have to look at the wind when we're spraying.
Right, you can have someone, you just wouldn't, if it's windy here, you wouldn't spray that.
A lot of 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning.
I have to change the schedule for these guys, bring them out earlier.
And honestly, with what we're proposing here, we look at this 4 days to spray that, you know, so,
You need the whole county out for 4 days.
no, just those roads, this test sample, so. I don't know what we grow into eventually, but this would be, my calculations, 4 days to get a good feeling for how it goes and see how year one goes and learn and grow from there if you want to.
What's our pleasure? I will make a motion to approve the roadside vegetation herbicide application for 2021. Dale. Any further discussion?
Do you have any input on this from, the county health officer helping us as far as the safety of this? Have we got any impact from that, input from that?
That's really already done by the EPA when you register the stuff and test it there and give it the specific warning label at which scale it's there. It's on a scale of 1 to 4, 4 being the bad
That's
stuff.
what it's done by the EPA, but there's lots of things that are not allowed in Dane County, even the EPA says you can. It's the political winds in the local area that can drive this.
Dane County is way different world than Dodge County. Good.
That's,
I think then it would be an ordinance in Dane County, so we wouldn't have an ordinance in town.
I can't do that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Eddie. Anyone's here? Scissors, all right. Let's do that. Let's move up to the purchase of the used scissors. Lee.
Okay, Nathan's gonna put a few photos on the board here. We didn't budget for this, but there's our very aged aerial work platform, scissors lift. That one on the left there was built by Mech. We don't even know how old it is. It's left us stranded. And when I say that, I mean, there's no, on that height, there is no way to let it down. So the guys were up working in it and had to get a ladder to get out of it. So we decided, let's look into purchase of a good used one. I did some research from like Sunbelt Rentals and United and Lincoln Contractors, Favorite Rents, and RH Equipment from Mayville. So the one on the right is the one that we're proposing we purchase. The model numbers kind of tell you the GS 2632 what it is. So there's 26 feet of working height and it's 32 inches wide. So we could, if we needed to, run it inside the building and use it inside somewhere. I mean, it'll get used inside our shops, we take it to our different shops. It's kind of a necessary thing because the boom lift that we purchased a couple of years ago, doesn't always work the best for something like this. So from what I have found, and from what you've seen there, and if Nathan, if you wanna bring up the next slide that's got the quote from RH Equipment, based on what's out there, this machine here, 2015 model, only yeah, 2015 model, only has 113 hours on it. Newer batteries, non-marking tires, joystick control. His asking price was $10,900, and then he was willing to deduct any rent that we would incur on it. So we had it rented for a month because we needed it, because we had equipment and stuff to work on here inside our buildings and doors and.
How many units do we have right now? How many do we own right now?
This would be the only one that's a scissors lift, the other one's a telescopic boom.
What other departments?
Russ Graber and Physical Facilities has got like a little basket kind of.
Will they be able to use this one, don't they?
If they ask. Yeah, it'd be available for, yeah. We're willing to share, we're not that way. We actually share equipment back and forth a fair amount. We get a little bit leery about just letting them take like bucket truck, for instance, because these guys aren't trained to use it, so we'll do stuff for them. But, yeah. If Russ would need it somewhere, yeah, we haul it there and take it.
For employee safety too, these units, I've got 3 of them in my facilities, and they're just so much safer than men trying to work on ladders and
Yep.
get places where you gotta get that, you just reach out here, you're working on a safe platform. It's new enough.
And this one,
Certified.
and this one, for instance, does have a, so if you are for some reason stranded up in that basket, it does have a hydraulic release.
Valve, hydraulic valve that just lets
Yeah,
the pressure
the
down
old
when you get down.
Naval Engineering one on the left there doesn't have anything like that.
Now, this one's certified,
Yes,
so the other one probably going to iron, I think.
yes.
There's no part availability.
No, I don't. Auction it. So that's my request, that we spend, well, what'll be approximately about $10,500, because we paid for a nice rent already.
Unless he's gonna forgive the rent as part of the deal, you know?
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
We don't buy, there's money in the capital account right now, the equipment, other than, I will be purchased, well, this is under, available.
We're gonna
By that tractor.
Dave, can I make the motion? Okay, motion by Ed to authorize purchase of used scissor lift. Okay, second by Dale. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. At this point, we'll move back to the beginning of the agenda. Before I go any further, I see Supervisor Malloy is with us here. Do you wish to be paid for this meeting, Carol?
No, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stay. We're good. Thank you.
All right. Approve the minutes of March 4, 2021 meeting. Everybody get a chance to look at them? Motion by Dave to approve. second? I'll second it. By Jeff. Keeper Moore. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. Okay. Highway condition safety concerns. Anybody, anything they wanna bring to the committee's attention? Okay, nothing there. Approved per diem for March 18 employee recognition. I am going to withdraw my request for a meeting for that per diem. I'll just use that as a good faith to say thank you to our employees and donate some time to that. Thank you for doing that. You are welcome. Okay, item number 7, discuss summer road school registration. Y'all got a copy of the registration. I guess we're gonna try and run road school in person this year. Brian, you got any comments?
They are certainly planning on having it at Chula Vista in a somewhat different approach than we've had in the past, but similar. I mean, at least it's gonna be on site. Any display areas or any common areas are gonna be outside, a big tent type of venue. And there's also gonna be, I think, a virtual option for at least some of the working sessions. People are still under travel restrictions or choose not to go. There'll be a virtual attendance for some of the main presentations. So, the question is who, we need to register if we're gonna participate or not, and just as importantly is if anyone needs a room reservation, the sooner we know that, the better. And there's been a change in room reservation cancellations. They used to let us reserve rooms, and if we didn't need them, we'd cancel them without any consequence. Now it costs $30 to cancel a room. So, I guess if we need any rooms, let's be sure we're gonna leave them. We still have, if we have to cancel, we have to cancel, but it's not as generous as it used to be. And the deadline is the deadline for registration to get paid timely would be April 14th. And sooner than that, for room reservations if possible. Let me know, let Cindy know, phone call, email.
We're ready to go now, Monday night.
Yeah, I think it.
I see they don't have no pricing on your for salt thing, but is that not sure yet, or? You're always going to charge.
Paid $99 or something for your spouse for their.
I will, yeah. Well,
They got it on here if you want more, huh?
yeah, I think the third line down, registration deadline member spouse guest. I'm trying to find,
Third line down.
Right, is that for that, or?
that's the spouse.
Or that would, they don't have the price for the boat tours, they don't have, the craft.
That's all included in that.
The boat tours included in the craft?
Yep.
Yep, so that's up to one.
Yep, for the spouse, yeah.
I guess just, Dave and I had gone to the last one that was still in person, and they had done a really good job of, rather than everybody sitting at tables, they had everything pretty well distanced out, and it felt safe. I frankly didn't go to the buffet dinner, but I guess, other than that, the meetings and things, I don't know, we did, if you felt okay about it.
And I will.
I've got to look at my schedule before I even comment one way or the other on this one.
School board goes there, on Monday.
Okay, if you could let me or Cindy know, and just return this as well. So we can get, anyone who wants to go register and get it paid by the deadline, so we avoid the,
457 to get it paid for.
yeah, so she needs it 14 to get it paid.
Okay, thank you. Betcha. On to commissioner reports.
Fortunately, I don't have a lot of news this year, really. Give you a little update on the hiring. We're struggling a little to hire mechanic Had a pretty nice guy we interviewed last week and I really thought he was interested in joining us, but he declined our offer, so we're disappointed in that, so we're still getting applications trickling in slowly, and we're, gonna introduce some more people probably later this week, first part of next week, and it's kind of the same timing of the same success or lack of for the building maintenance technician. So we're working on filling some vacancies. Just sharing this, something that Jim actually shared yesterday, he found online, about a couple of counties and their lack of success trying to get additional funds for the transportation program. So, Jim suggested I share with the committee today. I think it's good to see what some of the other ideas are. It's unfortunate they weren't successful. I think it reminds us how lucky we are to have the opportunity to do what we're doing.
Yeah. Interesting information.
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
That's all I have.
that's it. Project updates. Nathan?
So highway dam reconstruction, we've got our reconstruction meeting on Tuesday, 13th for that. Bunch of us from home will be there, contract obviously. We'll see what they're proposing for, project. They did share, professionally, they did share their, schedule with us. And it looks like, some planning, construction start there the first week in half. And then that would end first week in September. Highway down, yeah, they're reconstruction, they're
If anybody from the committee is gonna attend that, I kinda need to know, so we post it if we need to. If nobody's gonna attend, it's fine. It's the 13th, what?
Yeah, 9 o'clock.
That's bid opening?
No, that's pre-construction meeting for highway. That'll be Tuesday, 9 o'clock, you'll have to be here, right in this room.
I will try to attend that. Anybody else's schedule?
Tuesday and what time?
9 AM, Tuesday the 13th.
I'll post it, I'll get it.
I think it, yeah, I suggest posting that.
Right by the brothers.
Where's the opening? Right here.
Well, this is pre-construction.
Bid opening's already done, this is pre-construction, just talking,
Well,
going through the phase.
if you post it, then,
Yeah, I'm
we'll
looking
show
for
it.
it.
That's what we just said.
This is a pre-construction, there'll be a bid opening on the opening at 15.
That, and the bid opening is the project we've got to talk about, DD and TWI, the bid opening for that is on next week Thursday.
And I propose a special meeting on the 15th for the bid openings for the repaving projects for this, right, first phase. And I think you guys are already in town for meeting in the morning, so if we did something at 1 PM on the 15th, would that work for?
We have the opportunity.
1 PM on Thursday the 15th for a special meeting, as long as we're talking meetings here. That would work.
I'll post all three of those events, so I have committee members there covered.
And the bid opening then is at 9 AM on the 15th?
Yeah, that's 9 AM.
David? 1 o'clock for the special highway committee meeting to award bids. 1 o'clock. That's what it kind of kept, hopefully kept it tight now that you didn't have to have a lot of downtime to attend that. Well, you probably don't have to leave if you're. Okay.
There's a couple other things.
Sure.
So we started, staking for highway DB intersections. And we're gonna have that addendum, but in terms of where the curves are gonna lay out, the intersections, that's not gonna change whether we use film overlay or the proposal and stuff, so. in place versus mill and overlay?
No. The reconfiguration of the intersection.
Intersection.
Oh, there's gonna be curbs at the intersections, so we've been doing, we're gonna get surfacing, but, basically curbs at the races are on the roads.
So the intersection, you're gonna change.
Yep.
Where we have enough right of way, we make them bigger and more accommodating to the bigger ag equipment. If we're restricted by utilities or right of ways, then they're gonna stay similar to the.
Hey.
We're making it up here. So you're also gonna be, posting the ad for our seal coating work. We got last year, like 22 miles last year for seal coating. This year we proposed to do all the roads we paved last year, seal coating, so Highway M, AY, J,
Closing that Onyx here.
That's what I was gonna ask, are they use the Onyx for the steel coat?
they'll get,
It'll be that spec.
That's not necessarily that.
Design's continuing, we got our phase two. So that's highways EM, CP, SAC.
That's the sheet here we're talking about, right, Nate?
Those projects are listed on there. But basically the ones that are highlighted, the ones that aren't going in, bid opening on Thursday, the rest of those will be the second half. And Highway R, we're doing some work down there by Lebanon, we have a drainage, at the intersection of R and M, right up to the east side of the road and the west side of the church there. A little bit of drainage issue there, in the culvert, that's actually starting this week. The thing there is to move the water kind of down within that wetland area, so it drains underneath the road, across the culvert, and it's not really draining very well. Basically move the water from that culvert down where it should be. We're looking to start that work, next week. That's what I have about.
Okay. Looks like there's plenty of work to keep everybody busy, huh?
Always.
We'll fix some more.
A lot of breakups all over the county.
Yeah, there are. Yes, there are. Okay, any questions for Nathan, committee? Right, item 10, assign right-of-way responsibilities for MJF Accountant J.
We need to buy right of way for this last section of M, which, depending on how our budget goes, could be constructed next year or the following year, depending on how we do. The project this year will take us from E up to just south of JM. We designed and bought that far. We want to get from JM then up to, well, this particular plat is the Coughlin Road. We need to get that bought, so we get utilities moving this year. So typically what we looked at contracting right away purchasing out because of the season we have, and we took a look at the RFP and the process and the potential costs, and you know what? Let's fit it in and buy it ourselves. I think it's gonna be faster and buy it out cheaper. We'll buy it in-house. So the first thing we need to do, the appraisals are done, the staking is done. I sent initial letters out to the owners to give them a heads up that we're coming. The next step is, we typically have 2 committee members that agree to review the appraisals and the offers. And we can sit down together and do that. If they're good with them, any questions, we get the questions answered. If we want to change something, we change it. And then the next step after that is there's 2 committee members who volunteer to approve those. Or, yeah, have to get the whole committee approve them at the next meeting. What I'd like to do if possible is have 2 people today agree to do the review. And if possible, we get that done before the 15th. We're meeting on the 15th anyway. Do the approval then, and I can get going on the negotiations for the purchases. There's 12 parcels, 11 or 12. It wouldn't be a real huge time sometime between now and the fifteenth, or whatever works for the,
This is what section of that?
from JM up to Coughlin Road.
Okay. So that's way beyond on my property.
Yep. Yeah, Kreitzinger is the
I've
common
done it
name up
before.
there.
Sorry.
We'll leave it unposted after that.
After the pre-construction meeting?
Okay, great, thank you. And then if we want the committee to approve them on the fifteenth, we don't necessarily need two more people.
Right.
We'll bring the recommendation to the fifteenth to get it done. Okay, great.
Brian, if you could, I just wanna go back in history a little bit, if you could remind these guys of some of the things that can happen with this, because we had those, couple of episodes that I remember, for instance, I think it was Old by Ashton, when they contested after the fact,
Yeah.
all that business, right?
Yep.
And then the situation, for instance, how it works, when they purchased the land for the Trenton Highway shop, and then there was a change in the market, right? Because of the Walmart distribution
Yeah.
purchase, and then the value was drastic. So then there's like a 3-year period that the parties can reopen, and then it ends up costing you more, but, you know, that's stuff that I learned with my experience on the committee, you know, but, some of these guys need to be aware of that ahead of time.
Those anomalies can occur.
Those
right?
things
Yeah,
are-
they can.
They are real, we've been pretty lucky that way, but yes, if we can't come to terms with somebody, we give them a jurisdictional offer, and through the eminent domain process, we take ownership of their property. I don't like to do that, I've only, in fact, since I've been here, we've never had to, well, we did too, we went to court with, fell up on YY. The only one, otherwise, we negotiate, we offer a good fair price based on appraisal and current values, but yes, things can happen. The fellows in Ashton, we did end up settling with on Highway O, but it takes a while. If you gotta go to the jurisdictional offer, there's a 90-day period where nothing happens. Then you take ownership, then your utilities get moved, so the sooner we get this started, the better off we are.
Yeah, I agree, you have to pursue
We do, and there are.
acquisition right away, I agree.
In this case, there's actually some excess right away we're looking at reverting back. You remember a couple of years ago, that Kreitzinger fellow that was in here?
Okay.
That exceptional right of way width on the east side, we have the opportunity here to revert some of that back, which we can buy some from them on the other side of the road, so. That'll be
Some
a
trade-off.
Yeah, that'll be
It'll be 1,000 on my.
it'll be fun. We'll work it out. I'm pretty confident in that.
What's the sort of the cheese factory?
Well, we are, I mean, that building is basically on a right-of-way line. Their well is in the right-of-way, but we're gonna do our best to go right around that property, minimize the impact, work with them. And there, it's a home, we can make it work safely, so we're just gonna work with them. Get our road done.
Okay. Thank you. Transfer of lease for airport lot number 24.
Okay, this is a request to transfer this lot to Philip Tegmeyer. If you remember back in the day, a fellow named Mike Tegmeyer ran the airport. This is his brother. And they did a background check on him, which is what's required. He doesn't have a background, he's that good at DOT. He has nothing, so I would recommend we transfer to Philip Tegmeyer.
Okay. Motion by Dave.
Second.
Second by Dick. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That is approved. You betcha. Now we'll move down to the cost share agreement for town road sign replacement.
Okay, this has kind of been on our radar for a little while, and finally, we got a chance to bring it up. That's not too far out of town here, that's actually 2 street name signs. I'm not picking on anybody, but this is the town road, Cook Road, this is Tony Road S. That's what they used to say, they're white. Some towns have the ability to maybe maintain that and stay on top of it better than others. I think the towns that have their own workforce have a better opportunity to notice that and correct it than others. There's a couple problems with this one. One, Essex is pretty busy there, and if people are slowing down trying to read a sign because they're new to the area, it's not safe for them to just slow down in the middle of a highway like that to try to read signs. You know, potential to cause some rear end collisions and things like that. The other problem is, it's obviously been here a long time because nothing can compete with a stop sign. And that's sitting on top of our stop sign, and that's just not good at any rate. So, I guess I've thought for a while that it's kind of a no man's land there, that the town says, well, it's your road, it's your sign is up there, and we say, well, it's kind of that point finger at each other kind of thing. So my proposal would be that we make an offer to the towns that on these town road intersections, when signs need to be replaced, we would take care of it at approximately 50% cost share. We just figured out what materials and labor and equipment would cost for us to replace this today, and $203 is our estimate for one installation replacement. New post, relocated to a new spot, so it's off our stop sign, new signs and hardware. Some wouldn't require the new post or the new hardware, we could just replace the blades. But I think a fair offer to the towns to keep it easy would be $100 their cost. If they agree and wanna do it, we'd do it for $100, kind of a 50. If you agree with that, I'm the speaker at the Dodge County Towns Association unit meeting next week. And I could propose it to them at that meeting.
There's no policy or anything, so,
No, I think to the letter of the law, we would say it's not necessary on a county system, you're welcome to put it there at your expense, otherwise we're not gonna have one. But they're there, and they're, in some cases, frankly, a hazard. Other towns have done a pretty good job. And just put it out there as kind of an idea.
I think it's a good goodwill gesture to the townships to help them out.
We're having a problem in our town, people stealing signs, they're just gone.
got a name like, it's all.
If on a
Yeah.
flyer, doesn't you buy it? What do you need, I'll get you some.
So it's just an idea to put before the committee.
Are you looking at doing it as not to exceed $100 or not to exceed 50%?
Well, my thought was, the proposal here was if it's just $100.
$100 flat fee.
Some would be a little more, some would be less, that's a fair average, but it's
It's the
easy.
other way around, our time township furnishes, people that side. Now, all of us, we could go, we work half the time, right?
Well, we could do it either way, but that's a good point. If it's, you know, it's gotta be to our standard, which everyone I see is, for this $55 speed limit, it's gotta be a 6-inch letter on a 9-inch blade. And the ones I see, they are
Both of them that they.
complying, that's what's required out here, 55 miles an hour. 6-inch letter on a 9-inch blade. That's the only way we do it, and I think we stick to white on green rather than different colors in different towns or any of that kind of a arrangement. If they wanted to participate, it would be,
Some colors, that's one of the home defense cars, some of the townships supposed to be colors. Hey, they don't look good.
Well, the old black on white ones you see there, you know, I just.
Maybe that could be kind of right and left, things like that.
Go there with a stencil.
You got these nice trucks now, you know.
Well, it's an offer to them, and they're not required to take it.
Now, that's exactly it.
I remove the fee for that.
Some of them towns say, we pay for yours, we don't pay for ours.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Dave to approve the cost share agreement for town roadside replacement. Who's our second? Second by Dale. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Oh, John. Not fault. One time about township, talking between county and township. Were you approached by, a deaf child in Richmond?
yeah, I talked to Ron Johnson on that.
That's all over.
Yeah. I did, Nathan did as well.
Are you gonna put a sign up for that?
No, we sent him, I sent him the reference from the DOT on that kind of signage. Talked to him about it, told him, you know, where we're at with that. And that, it's not gonna happen, and he's finally gonna work with the family, and I think we're set. Haven't heard back from him since.
Yes, I looked at it. I understand what you, time frame, new life, or, time frame for kids grow up, people move. But I'm just wondering what the difference is between that and around the buggy sign.
How much buggy signs got horse shit going on?
Yeah, and it's a good point, and the Amish buggy sign is more about an entire area and an awareness of everything up over the next hill or around the curve. These child and play signs, deaf child signs, typically they're for a very small, narrow area, primarily get ignored. I think the only time they're really appropriate is if there's a visibility challenge, and there isn't here, and the speed limit's reduced. So it's just, I understand
So I'll
that.
bring it up.
Yep, and I did talk to him, I guess is the answer. I think he's good with where we are.
Then the next item is the 2021 discretionary traffic maintenance agreement with WSDOT.
Okay, this is something we do annually. This is the, basically the contract with DOT to do their traffic markings, their sign, or their traffic striping. It's a separate contract from the RMA, it's in addition to the RMA. This year's contract offering is $409,800. Do striping on state roads in numerous counties, obviously. We do Dodd, we do some in Jefferson. Once in a while over near Dane, we get, kind of from the Dells down to the state line. This year's offer is $409,800. Last year's was $400,600, so $9,200 increase. Weather permitting, of course, we can do the work, not concerned with that, and we've always worked pretty well to get them in and done. And if the weather is poor, they recognize that because all painters are having a struggle, and once in a while what they'll do, and we've gone both ways on this. One county can't complete there, somebody from another county might be done and does state striping, Dane County or Adams County, they'll come in and paint wherever somebody can't get. So it's kind of a work together thing that we offered. $409,800 this year. No, that's what more mileage on it. This includes them buying the paint. They don't give us specific highways they wanna do, they give us the amount and then they program where we go on that. So we need a motion, authorizing me to sign this.
So moved. Motion by Jeff. Is there a second? Second by Dave. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Good job. Okay, 2022 project list prioritization.
So you guys have handouts, we got blue and yellow coloring on them. These are lists that, of roads we've identified that are in need of resurfacing. Blue highlighted roads and projects that we're going on this year. The other ones are the ones that we're kind of looking at for next year. I wanted to get you guys feedback on basically the yellow projects. Right now, I can tell you we're in the design phase of some of these blue projects, but that's gonna end pretty quick. So in order to stay on track for doing a bunch of miles again next year, we're gonna go right into the design phase, and start looking at, starting to design next year's project. So, talking about it, looking at what roads need to be done, trying to spread them around the county. These yellow ones are the ones that we're looking at.
Is this list assuming that we have borrowed funds again to complete all these.
Yep, because the number of miles that are on yellow is very close to the number of miles for blue, so basically it's the same thing we're doing this year.
It's really getting the engineering done, so we're ready, depending on whatever funding we have available.
Exactly.
When are you gonna start the process of the forward?
We're gonna wait and see what the federal money is first, I would say, before we look at borrowing. Because if there's funds available that way, okay, we will make our.
That was gonna be my question. What if we end up having more money available? Do we make sure that we have enough projects ready to go?
That is my concern.
Right, like a reserve?
And that's a very good question, and it's a concern of ours, that to tell you the truth, we don't have much in inventory left on the shelf. These that are in yellow would match this year's nothing extra, however, this entire list are good candidates, and if we wanted to amp that up, we need to know that.
Right.
Well,
Because the designs won't go south, they'll always be good work.
And then, of course, you know, we're focusing on replacing pavement, but there's some other things that we need to tend to. One of them would be some safety improvements, you know, you got some intersections and curves and whatnot that I know you wanna.
All right, great.
So somehow we have to get kind of a,
Well, you know, ideally, we prioritize this entire list.
a store case so that we can, look, let's do it. Now's the time is right, let's pull it out, let's go do it.
On all these examples in yellow, on the mileage, you're wondering if they have, are we doing part of the road in these situations? Or are we doing the whole road?
Well, that's a very good question, and I appreciate that discussion, because we don't like to segment and abandon stretches of pavement, so we've tried to pair these up, we've tried to make logical beginnings and termini, so that we incorporate bad roads in the same area and that are intersecting each other. A good example of that on here is a section of TW by Kikoski. We'll do that with, is that B? So that's a good contiguous project and
But
that.
when you look at mileage on Q, we got 6.2 miles, does that mean you're doing part of the road?
No, that means that it's 6.2 miles between Highway 19 and Highway 10.
So we all have fuel.
Highway 19, Highway 10?
We have the mileage on the sheet, so we can keep track of, I mean, it's based on budget. We know we can do about 30 miles with the borrowed funds. So we keep the mileage on the charts, so we can know when all said and done, we have about 30 miles at the end. So we take one road off this list, add a different one, we're gonna wanna match the mileage.
So I had another question relative, I'm glad Brian brought up TW with Kikoski. So now we have this weird situation with a incorporated village, right? And so court battle wages on it, whatever, then how do we make sure we account for the local share, right? And things of that nature, which leads me into another thought. So city of Beaver Dam is growing on that south end, the conversation came up, you know, out by that Quick Trip development and County Road D corridor. What if the city says, oh, we're gonna invest our stimulus money in extending sewer and water, and then of course the county has to think about how do we budget for the pavement replacement for what we're responsible for, you know, do the jurisdictional transfers and things of that nature, right? So we also have to think about those, and I'm just using that spot as an example of growth area. There's other ones around by Watertown and, you know, other places in the county. But we need to think about, you know, how we're gonna deal with that.
The first part of your question is Kikoski and their anomaly there being a village, out there where our county highways pass through. And there's state statute and past history here that addresses that. Typically, in that situation where it's a county highway in a municipality, county is responsible for the center 22 feet. Anything beyond that is the municipalities. We've done it in Reachville and Lowell, we've done that in Ashland, we've done that Iron Ridge. We've got that same agreement being drafted right now by, Corp Council, and I've talked to Village of Petoskey about it, they're willing to participate and pay for their share of this. We've got one short stretch of TW that also has same scenario on one side with the city of Mayville,
Yeah.
like Park. And the city's willing to pay their portion. We've got a similar situation that we have to negotiate yet up with this Village of Randolph. So we'll work with them because they own a portion on one side of that project. Next year, we'll have a very similar situation with the town of Eustisford on that section of E from Lake Drive down to R. And we talked to them, and they're willing to participate as well. We're talking with the Village of Clyman. We're looking at doing J through Clyman from M to 26. A portion of that goes through the Village of Clyman. So we're meeting, in fact, we have another meeting with them tomorrow. They have some very clever funding options that they can pursue because they qualify with that.
Community development block grant funds for low and moderate income.
Low and moderate income,
So I have a question on that issue right there, going through Clyman in the village. We follow the same criteria for every village in that county where we go through County Road or some villages that different rate.
Since I've been here, I think they've all been treated the same.
They're all paying the same.
The only difference is like Iron Ridge. When that went through Iron Ridge, we applied for state federal funding to help with that project.
Do we have that in the policy?
That was a state statute.
As far as the question.
It's a state statute. But when we went through Iron Ridge, we had state federal funding. So that 80% applied to the project, and then we balanced out the local share between us and the agency based on the state statute. That was a little bit of a different, but huge benefit to all. We all gained from the state federal funding. These projects I'm referring to now is solely between the county and the other municipalities, but it works if you have willing partners. So far, we've been very lucky in negotiating. On occasion, we may have to agree to fund the project up front and get reimbursed next year.
Does that same theory, as far as state tax statute, does that also apply to road plowing in villages?
Yep.
So they're all paying the same?
Yeah, we basically just plow center. They plow the rest. Same with shouldering now in the village, they gotta shoulder all that because it's a really strange situation. Now, there is one thing we're putting in that agreement with Petoskey. If the court overturns this decision and those roads, then they become a town again, then we would return a prorated portion of their contribution over a 20-year amortization.
That's what I see.
If they turn that over 3 years from now, we'll amortize out a refund. And I think that's only fair, because if they were in town, then they wouldn't pay it.
I agree.
So there's a lot of moving parts here, but it's worth it. We have good partners out there to make these deals work, and it helps us get these projects done.
We do a good job of negotiating, working with these communities too, to come to an agreement that's fair and everybody buys in on.
Well, I mean, why do you even have to use the word negotiate? It's more or less at the top, it's the way it is.
There's always little bits of give and take that you work out to make everybody happy.
So
And it's
what
the
you're
same.
saying, we're not following the standard deal?
Following the standard deal, they just do a good job of working with the municipalities to get it worked out that everybody stands.
Frank Nathan there, where are we at, if we need, if we're trying to get more projects ready to go, with the idea that funding may be available, are we able to get those engineers, are we going to have to outsource, get more engineers, where are we at on that?
Yeah, I think, we figured out the gearing design about 20 miles away. Anything beyond that, we have to outsource it. We did have to outsource a couple of these other ones. We had, Bremer design, highway PM, CP, and, Highway for us this year. So we can get these projects ready to go for this year. So I think looking ahead, and Yeah, we're doing that now on our project for this year. We had them all inspected and now we're starting to move ahead.
Yeah, we prioritize this list, and we know which ones we need to advance, that's what makes this work. We can plan ahead a little better.
Are we able to adjust the budget to do some more outsourcing of engineering to get a larger number of miles on the shelf in this year, so we're ready if there is an infrastructure funding coming from the feds?
Let me work on that, I'd like to, but I don't wanna tell you yes, sit here today, we need to, one of the things we don't have yet is, and hopefully very soon, is what our fund balance is. Because we've not applied any of that 2020 fund balance, and I think there's going to be some, which would certainly be a good candidate to consider for additional design. The other thought, and we'll all come to this at some point here, the more funds become available, the harder it's gonna be to get anybody to design. So we get up front of it, we've got a leg up here. We wanna put 20 or 30 miles out for design now and get it going. It might not be the wrong thing to do.
I believe
I don't go back.
It doesn't.
I believe we should be looking at whether we can fund that and get more projects ready to go. So we're ready when they're ready.
You wanna give me an amount here that we should try to outsource, like we can get a proposal and then start to find money?
You know what you don't want to do.
Right, right.
I'm trying to get to here, should we give the commissioner and the assistant commissioner and let them decide based on the worst, the best of the worst here?
Well, I guess some of that would be, what our capacity is to doing culverts and so forth. How much can we do on our end, so we would have shelf-ready projects engineered to go forward.
And I think we should get them engineered, and then, second phase, like you said, can we go as pipe order, or do we let a contractor get pipe replaced? So nothing lags. Oh, they're terrible. We're lucky we have so many yards, everything's getting really stretched.
Another thing, I don't want you to give up on concrete pavement. I think if we're gonna have some infrastructure money from the feds or wherever, instead of looking at doing more roads, maybe we should do 50-year roads instead of 20-year roads. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
And make it, and that increases the capacity in the marketplace when you include those concrete paving contracts as well.
Certainly worth considering, sure.
Now, we're looking at, you're looking at roughly 30 miles in this. I guess, this was something to talk about, would be, what would it cost us to engineer and others, so we'd be ready to go if that money is there. And I'm not saying we're gonna do it, we don't need to get see what the costs are, and what the capacity is.
Federal budget this year.
Maybe Jim's got a better opinion on that.
Well, the American Rescue Plan Act of 21, there's that allocation to Dodge County, a little over 17 million, that will be discussed at the Finance Committee Monday and the County Board on the 20th. And it's unknown at this point what the actual guidelines are from the U.S. Treasury. They haven't released those yet. So we're not entirely sure what's going to be allowed and what isn't as far as expenditures. But what we do know, based on the legislation, that the expenditure period runs through December 31 of 2024. And what we also know is that the first half of the county allocation is supposed to be made within 60 days of the bill signing, which was March 11th, which would make it May 11th. But then there's a certification process, which we'll be talking about at the Finance Committee next week and the County Board on the 20th. So there's steps in the process. But then also with that, and you'll see on the finance agenda, when the package comes out today, there's also a plan would need to be developed through the committee process and ultimately the county board for a plan or expenditure plan for those dollars. So it's a multi-step process. Once we learn, and we don't have, as of today, I was on a conference call yesterday, and I'm convinced that the counties, when I say counties, it's all US counties, that the guidance from the US Treasury will not be available by April 20th. I'll be shocked if it'll be provided by April 20th by the county board meeting, but all counties are in the same position at this time, waiting for that official guidance. So, back to your question, Dick, there may be some money available in 21. We don't know. A lot of moving parts and unknowns at this point.
There are no guidelines yet.
There are no
There's no
guidelines.
guidelines on when we use one.
All we know for sure, there was a big push on the original legislation for broadband. That's an eligible criteria, but that takes some planning as well. And there's supposed to be flexibility what that means. We don't know. So we'll have to wait and see along with everybody else what the criteria is.
Well, the other thing to think about too are some of these structures, because if there's a way that we can get an agreement with DOT to move up in the bridge program and fix some of these that are a bit, I mean, man alive, I expressed some of our frustration with Bourne when he was at the meeting the other day, you know. Basically, this department was forced into a bad situation with those two bridges on S, you know? And it's easy to be critical of the sunk costs and whatever that we're sticking in depreciated assets that are junk, but you had to do it, and because you were bumped. You know, we don't get those monies, so if there's a way that we can do this smart, and make the long-term investments with that quote-unquote free money, right? I think that's the best way to do it, but that's my opinion, right?
So basically, Nathan, comment I got, you said Gary can do about 20 miles of roads.
Yeah, but keep in mind, he's already working on highway costs right now, so he hasn't started any yellow.
Okay.
So if you were to start, this summer, it'd be about half a year, about 10 miles.
We're gonna get shelf ready at least 30 miles, and like to Dave's point, more than that. We're gonna have to get some outside help here.
No, you're planning on 20 miles outsourcing.
Correct.
It'd be another, whatever, 30 or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know, another 30, we'll get a proposal,
See what you can,
choose another 30 miles on this list and see what it might cost to get some design help on that.
So get back to the bridge, so the one on J is scheduled for next year, I believe, right?
Right.
Then, does J appear on your list there?
Next year.
Okay,
10-4.
because I want, you know, those folks in Lowell and whatever. with
It's
San
close, so we're
Francisco,
gonna do road.
all that business, I'd sure like to have them using J.
Right?
But you can't, those trucks don't wanna drive on that either,
No.
even with a new bridge, right?
Right, no, we thought as long as the road's closed, let's do it.
Right.
Exactly.
My question on this list is a priority ranking. Why do we jump around?
Couple reasons, one is safety and condition, one is, we've kind of talked about this in the past, to have some representation in all corners of the county. Type of traffic, safety concerns that are given to us by residents, by the patrolmen that patrol these sections, history of maintenance or needing maintenance and not wanting to spend money on them. There's a whole host of things going to these, and it's not, right, it's not cast in stone, that's why it's here. If you think there's a road in your area that's in worse shape than the one that's on here, that's what we wanna talk about. I think you mentioned FW before, pretty low volume, but in horrible condition, well, you know, if we're gonna design additional roads, maybe that's one we should get on the short list. It's hard, there's not enough to go around, and it's a real struggle sometimes to prioritize it.
Bad ones everywhere.
You think that we're on a day when
blank on that.
Hold my breath on that one.
Go the other way around.
Usually you have a blacktop before you would take.
I understand that.
But even then,
Even then, they don't want
Use
to.
that as an incentive to.
There's a guy from the town of Beaver, I'm shaking his head, no.
How many do you want to?
well, actually, I'm telling you, we just talked about that little piece of J Road or whatever it is, which has been in dispute for a while. We'd gladly get rid of it, to the landowners. Barstow Road, which was old G, right, same thing, we wanna get rid of that thing. We had one out on 151 by Newman Pools and the rent-a-car place, and of course, there was a church out there that Newman's actually owned the building. We wanted to vacate that road, basically make it a private road for those folks, but in fact, we were on the cusp of doing it, except our town chairman wanted to preserve that in case DOT needs it later, and I'm like, DOT can condemn it, and take it back, as far as I'm concerned, because they left us with a bag of crap. But, there's a number of them in the township, we're trying to get rid of them, not paying them. We just don't have the means to raise the money to maintain them under the current.
We're all singing the same song.
Do you ever didn't get part of that 17 million?
Well, we're gonna get some money, there's no two ways about it, but we have other issues too, right? So,
We do.
I mean, our emergency services are consuming our entire budget and then some. We had to borrow money for roads, cause there's nowhere to get it. Unless there's a referendum, right? You can always try that, but I guess we saw the result of referendums in this information handed us today.
Didn't go well, did it? Yeah, we're getting close here, we're determining talking about the next meetings and times. We have, currently, we've got a meeting posted for the 13th for the pre-construction meeting, and the 15th at 1 p.m. for awarded bids for paving. And then our next regular meeting. First Thursday of May, which is that appropriate, Brian?
Works for me.
Okay. Right? Maybe it's May. Is that all right with you guys?
Depends on the plans.
Yeah, that's right. We'll be getting time then, won't it? Okay, special meeting on the 15th at 1 p.m. and then May 6th, 8:30 for regular. Future agenda items.
But if we're ready for any, I guess maybe my thought would be for the meeting on the 15th, we keep the agenda short. We would have approve the right-of-way offers and award the contract.
Yep.
Stick to that.
Yep, I think that's appropriate.